Well, hello and welcome here to the 7 Hebrew words of praise. This is episode 1, and we are going to be investigating the word halal. So most of the time when we use the word praise, we usually lump it in with the word worship as well. Unfortunately, this is a common misconception where in reality the word praise really means a physical act of worship and something that we can anchor ourselves in when we engage in worship. So when we look at the 7 Hebrew words of praise, we have number 1, which is halal, number 2, which is yadah, number 3, which is barak, number 4, which is tehillah, which sounds like something else, but we'll come back to that another time. Number 5, which is zamar, 6 is taudah, and 7 is shabach. Now, as I said before, today we're focusing on the word halal. So, halal is an ancient Hebrew word which, when it's written out, actually looks like a pretty cool logo. But it has 4 definitions. 1 is to be clamorously foolish. Yikes. 2, to boast. 3, to shine or to rave. And 4, to act madly. These are really bold expressions of praise that we don't see very often in our worship settings that we're typically putting ourselves in. And this ancient word halal occurs 165 times in 140 verses in the Old Testament. That's the most common word for praise that's used in the Old Testament. So what's this supposed to look like for us today? Even though this word might seem new to you, it might surprise you to know that we use this word quite often in current church language when we sing the word hallelujah, which we typically translate to mean praise be to God. Now, even though this is true, it's not 100% accurate all the time. Using the word halal and then the word Yah at the end, which comes from Yahweh or Yahweh, the true definition for this is actually to be clamorously foolish in response to God. Now all of a sudden this word has a little more weight than it did before. Now you might be finding yourself asking, what is this going to look like in real life? Because acting foolishly or madly or raving doesn't sound like a very comfortable act of praise. Well, to be kind of brutally honest, the truth is that it's not about you. It's not about me and how I feel in the moment. So I'm going to use some illustrations from the Bible to give us a little bit more direction of what this looks like and what we can expect. So the best way to approach praise is to look at it as an act of obedience, or even in some cases an act of sacrifice, versus something that's self-serving. When we look in Psalm 96, it says, "For great is the Lord and greatly to be halal. He is to be revered above all gods." And in Psalm 102, it says, "This shall be written for the generation to come, and the people which shall be created shall halal the Lord." In Psalm 22, it says, "I will tell of your name to my brothers and sisters. In the midst of the congregation, I will halal you." And in Joel 2, it says, "And ye shall eat in plenty, and be satisfied, and halal the name of the Lord your God, that hath dealt wondrously with you, and my people shall never be ashamed." And especially in this last verse, "my people shall never be ashamed," it doesn't start with that. You see, God honors us when we come to Him with humble hearts, and when we bring Him a sacrifice of praise. It says we will never be ashamed. But that doesn't mean we're going to be comfortable, and that doesn't mean it's not going to feel like an act of obedience. This is still something we need to push ourselves to on a regular basis. Now, you can find one of the best examples of this in 2 Samuel 6. And this is where King David is dancing before the Lord with all his might, is what it says in the Bible. He's in front of thousands of people, not just the Lord, and he is dancing recklessly. And what it actually does is it causes a bit of a tiff in his marriage, or with one of his wives, Michal. When she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she was filled with contempt for him. And basically, when he returned home, she approached him and she's like, "What were you doing dancing like this? You look like an idiot." And he responds like this. He says, "Yes, I am willing to look even more foolish than this, even to be humiliated in my own eyes. This is the King of Israel who's speaking this way, putting himself that low before the Lord, bringing a heart of praise and sacrifice in front of his whole nation and in front of God. So at this point, if you're anything like me, this word might come off as a little bit scary to you, and I completely understand. Chris Tomlin wrote, "A true halal contemplates laying aside your inhibitions and killing your self-consciousness." And that's scary to me. But am I willing to let that get in the way of me authentically and sacrificially worshiping my Creator? And now maybe you're asking yourself, what is this going to look like practically in my life? I'm not comfortable doing this in front of everybody in church. Well, maybe start in your own home first. And you can start with some small steps. Lock yourself in your room and raise your hands in prayer or in singing. And then as you get a little bit more brave, you could try a little dance, even though it feels a little bit silly. And then eventually you can move to a shout of praise, as long as you're not waking up your kids or your spouse. Whatever it is that you land on, make sure it's shaping the posture of your heart and that you really are bringing something in humility to the Lord. And he's going to honor you back. And then maybe the next time we get together as a church community and we're singing the words hallelujah, this has a richer meaning for you for the first time. And slowly you gain that boldness to model the way and to shape it for others. But more than anything, ask yourself the question, is this for my comfort or for his praise? Thank you so much for joining me. There's still 6 more words of praise, and I'm really excited to go through them with you. I'm really excited to hear if any of you are trying this at home on your own or as a family or with friends. And again, before you try to jump into something like this, the best thing you can do is mindfully reflect on Jesus and what he came to do on the cross and in our lives. And praise should be your proper and authentic response.